how you manage those relationships?
A producer can have a certain budget, and then he contacts people individually and pays them upfront. Or some producers can go through arrangements and have a memorandum of understanding with some of the people, maybe the cast and the crew, with an understanding that if I sell, I'll pay you this, but during production, I can give you facilitation, I can give you this and that. So it's normally a gentleman's agreement, but it most likely most producers put it in writing that so and so is getting this amount of money for the labor in terms of maybe sound recording or acting. So it's flexible, and some people actually have an obligation to pay. Some people pay, some people of course don't. But yeah.
You are together.
Because I thought she was asking for the structure. I just want to be clear. Was your question about the structure of filmmaking, the entire process? Because I heard you talking about from script to distribution, yeah? Was that your question?
Yes.
Okay. From my perspective, the very first thing is actually not the script, it's the concept, which we call the story. So I could have a story, so I'm a storyteller, but I don't write scripts. So I tell my story to a scriptwriter who comes up with the dialogue, the characters, and things like that. So they write the script.
Before you continue, is the story usually written? You're not a writer, but is the story in some form of writing?
It's an idea.
It could be told, it could be written.
Yeah, it's either way. I could write a vague
Story.
which sometimes we call a synopsis, what the story is about generally. Or I could just
Tell.
tell.
Okay.
Yes. So then the scriptwriter is one that adds the words, the dialogue, and the characters, which are the people in the story. Then after that, it goes through script supervision and editing. So people go through the script to take out the mistakes, to add certain things to it, and make it a better story based on just how a story structure should be. Yes. Then after that, I think we go, that's what we call the pre-production. Then we go to production itself. That's when you start. No, before that, I think still pre-production, we look for things like location, props, the things that we are going to use, location, props, costume, and the people who are going to come on board to work. That's the director, the entire crew. It's really a big crew. I can't break it down entirely, but there are so many departments in there. Oh, sorry. Do I have to repeat myself?
No, it's okay.
When it comes to still about pre-production, we have so many departments that come in before we start talking about now production. Production is the actual bringing the script to life. That's where the actors come in. That's when the directors start to do their job. That's when the makeup artists do what they have to do, the costume, and all other departments. Light, sound, that's all in production. Then after all that is done, there is what we call the post-production. In post-production is where we have the editors, the sound designers, and others, graphics, yes, and other things like that. Then after post-production, that's when we start the marketing. Posters start to come in, teasers, the pilot, trailers, things like that. After marketing, we go to distribution. There is when we look for the market. that has been the channel of the chain of production of film. So the distributor distributes to the final consumers, who are the viewers. But of late, there are other avenues that have come up, where you just have to write your concept, show how you're going to bring revenue to whoever is going to invest in it. If it's a pay TV, if it's a company that wants to maybe advertise through a film, or an NGO, you just write your concept, they finance, then you do a film, but still with the same procedure.
Thank you so much. All right, so we are going to look at copyright in the film industry, and we mainly, at the end of the presentation, we'll be looking mainly at contracts. What do we expect to be in those contracts? Obviously, there are different types of contracts in film. There are so many that I couldn't even put all of them in this presentation. But what is important is to know, if you are looking at an agreement concerning contract, what should you look out for? And where are you likely to make losses or gains in a contract? Yeah, so those are the things we are going to be looking at. So first of all, I'd like to tell you about URSB. I think you know what URSB is. Yeah, but you know that we administer different laws, and our main role is registration. Then when it comes to copyright, it is registration as well as supervision of CMOs. But for most of the other roles, like business registration, civil marriages, most of it relates to registration. So we have business registration. Here we reserve and register business names, companies, company resolutions, and other company documents. We also register legal documents such as contracts, agreements. So if you've entered a contract with someone and you want to notify the government about that contract, you bring it and register it with us, and it will be given a number. And anytime you want to refer to it in future, even if it's 20 years from now, you can always retrieve it, because it will be kept as a record on our register. Then we do insolvency and receivership. Here we regulate companies and insolvency practice in Uganda. Companies that go in Uganda, we supervise that process, and we make sure that the debtors and the creditors are dealt with in accordance with the law. Then civil registration. Here we celebrate civil marriages, and we recommend places of worship. Places of worship that should celebrate civil marriages. Then our main topic today, which is intellectual property. Here, we register copyright, trademarks, industrial designs, utility models, and patents. And the ones that are, I think, most important for filmmakers would be copyright and then trademarks. I will explain how trademarks are relevant to the film industry later. So copyright in Uganda, the relevant law is the Copyright Act of 2006 and the regulations thereunder. And copyright protects creations of the human mind, all of them in whatever form, but mostly they come in literary works, like books, stories, like she has just said that most films begin with a story. Then we have scientific works such as computer programs. We have artistic works, the visual art that you see may be displayed in galleries or in people's homes. Then intellectual works and all their neighboring rights. So basically, copyright and neighboring rights is covered by this law, and all of them are protected in Uganda so long as they are reduced into tangible form. And now that's where I want to come to the point of stories. So in film, since the process begins with a story, it would be advisable that before you give someone your story, you have reduced it into tangible form. Because if it is not yet reduced into tangible form, it is not yet protected by copyright. And if you tell it without reducing it into tangible form, and someone steals it, it will be very hard for you to get compensated for that. So it would be advisable that for anything you do for someone else in the process of filmmaking, you reduce it into tangible form.
By tangible form, you mean putting it in writing?
You could put it in writing, you could reduce it into a recording, anything that you can say, this is my work. So, I had already explained the works that are protected by copyright, so I don't think I need to repeat that slide. But you can ask any questions later in case you have any clarification that you need. But basically, just know that anything that is reduced into tangible form and falls under literary works, dramatic works, musical works, artistic works, audiovisual works, is protected by copyright. And the good thing is that it is not protected upon registration, but upon creation. So as soon as you create your work, it is already protected by copyright. Registration is only good for proving that you actually created this work and registered it and notified the public that this work exists. So in Uganda, copyright generally lasts for a lifetime of the creator and then 50 years after they are dead. So this is a long time. Now you see why registration is important. Registering your rights in copyright, why it is important. This is a long time. It means that your children and your children's children should be able to have a claim on this work. Because 50 years after death is such a long time. Unlike other types of intellectual property, which usually lapse within the lifetime of the author, we find that copyright extends beyond the lifetime. And so it would be advisable that you register for this purpose. Although it's not compulsory, but it is advisable because of this period of protection given. I think it is the most protected right among all intellectual property rights. So the rights of the author are two. Some are moral, others are economic. The economic ones are those ones where we are talking about money, okay? Things that should be paid for. If I have made my film and you want to reproduce it, you want to broadcast it, you want to distribute it, you want to translate it into another language, or you want to make an adaptation of it, you should be able to pay them. So those are the economic rights. Then we have moral rights, and you will notice that when you're making films, you acknowledge everyone who has had a role in the film. So even if someone was an employee and you paid them and hired them for that, and they transferred their rights to you and no longer have the rights in the film, you still have, sorry. So those are the economic rights and the moral rights. So you find that even if you paid them to make costumes for you, and they made them, and they are done, you still have to acknowledge them. It is because of this moral requirement that everyone should be recognized for the work that they have done. And in Uganda, they also have the right to object to changes of their work, and they have the right to withdraw work from circulation if a producer feels that a film no longer meets his views or something, he may have a right to withdraw it. Obviously, if you've already transferred rights, it means that you may have to compensate those people you transferred to, but you still have that moral right. Then recognition, like I said, it is very important. Everyone that has taken part, whether the cameraman, whether the person who made costumes, whether the person who narrated, the storyteller, all of them have to be recognized. Even though they may have been paid and their economic rights have ended, but they still have a right to be recognized morally for their contribution. And like I had mentioned before, copyright protection is automatic. The moment you create your work, it is protected. If it's still in your mind, like I said, you intend to tell the story later, and then in the night you forget and tell it to your children, and your children are the ones who write it first. Who is the copyright owner?
The children.
The children. If it's your friend whom you told at the back, the copyright owner is the person who reduces it into tangible form first. That is the copyright owner. So you should always remember that the moment you reduce it into tangible form, it belongs to you. Before you do that, it does not yet get protection under the law. So, in order to register your copyright, after you've reduced it into tangible form, let's say you want to register it, I'm going to continue. You are always free to ask questions. And by the way, you're even always free to visit our office and ask questions, okay? Let's say you have a contract agreement you want to enter in and you're not sure about certain things, you can always visit our office anytime and you get advice, and this advice is free. Under copyright, it's not like trademarks where if you want to know whether your trademark is registrable, you pay for that advice. But for copyright, it is free. So you can come to our office anytime and you ask any question you may have about the law or about any process in copyright generally. So the procedure for registration of copyright is you fill one form, it's a single form, and the fee is 50,000. After you have filed your application, together with your works which you intend to register, the registrar will review your application and issue a gazette notice, which you take to the Uganda Gazette, and it is published. The purpose for publication is to notify the public that so-and-so is applying for registration of this work, and if anyone has an objection, they should bring it to the registrar. If there is no objection, within 60 days after you have placed your copyright in the Uganda Gazette, then you will get a registration certificate. And this registration certificate is prima facie, or on the face of it, evidence of ownership. So in order for someone to challenge that ownership, they will have to go through a court process. But for all intents and purposes, you are the copyright holder. If you're dealing with this work, let's say for example, you want to take it to a pay TV or to any other distributor and you have this certificate,